Let's bring in NBC News senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake, NBC News business and data reporter Brian Chung, and New York Times chief White House correspondent Peter Baker, along with former CBO director and chief economist of the President's Council of Economic Advisors under President Bush, Douglas Holtz-Eakin. So, Garrett, how are you reading the signals, the tea leaves? Are they making progress? Are they not? No one is sending up any white smoke indicating there's a deal.
Well, and nobody's walked away from the table recently either, Andrea, and that's probably the most positive sign. The negotiators were back meeting between the White House and House Republicans last night until close to midnight, we're told, trying to come to an agreement. The reality here is they're basically out of time. These negotiators need to reach a deal either by close of business today or early tomorrow to turn it into a bill that can pass both chambers and be on President Biden's desk before we get through the day on June 1st. Now, we can quibble over what happens on June 1st if that deal isn't, or if that bill to raise the debt ceiling is not signed. Perhaps there's more time, perhaps there's not. But that's really the deadline that they're working on. And I think the combination of a quick look at the calendar and that warning from Fitch that there are about to be actual economic consequences to this instead of theoretical economic consequences may have lit the fire under these negotiators. Also, we're continuing to hear pretty strident rhetoric from Democrats who are growing increasingly frustrated. They're cut out of this process, House Democrats are, and they want to make sure that the public understands that the cuts that Republicans are talking about aren't just theoretical. They would potentially hurt real people. Leader Jeffries was on the floor a short time ago, hammering away at that point.
This default crisis is before the American people as a result of extreme MAGA Republicans making the political calculation that they will benefit in 2024 if they crash the economy. A political calculation that we're going to take hostages, the American people, the economy. Extreme MAGA Republicans have chosen to get out of town before sundown.
So with the White House not really engaging in the public debate with Speaker McCarthy, who has been on television really constantly for the last week or so, House Democrats are trying to kind of step into that breach. You have Jeffries, you're going to have a number of other House Democrats on the floor over the next hour or so, trying to make this argument that Republicans are making a cynical political move here that isn't just about dollars and cents, but would have an actual practical impact on real Americans. They are framing that argument ahead of seeing whatever this final deal ends up being that the White House will have to reach at some point with those same House Republicans. Andrea?
Peter, and Democrats are saying, not only where's the president, he's been back now for a couple of days from his trip in Japan, but where are the other cabinet secretaries pointing out how it would affect this agency or that agency? A lot of the discretionary, all the discretionary money is in non-defense and non-entitlement agencies. And Fitch says that invoking either of those break glass options, like the president invoking the 14th Amendment or minting a platinum coin, just would not prevent a credit downgrade, citing legal challenges. So those options really are off the table in terms of saving money and that the downgrading would cost.
Yeah, that's right. I think that you heard the White House yesterday, in fact, basically rule out the 14th Amendment option, saying that while they think, the president said he thinks he may have that authority, he worries that the litigation part of it would still lead the country into default while we fought it out in the courts. So, yeah, you're not hearing the White House and the administration take on the same kind of, sharp tone that you're hearing from the House Democrats. There's kind of a good cop, bad cop scenario here in which the Biden team is leading on the table, trying not to complicate the negotiations with the public messaging that in their view go too far, but they don't have any problem with Hakeem Jeffries doing that, of course. And look, we're in a tight spot here. The problem is not only that they have to have a deal done within hours or a day or so in order to meet the deadline, they have to have a deal done that can still pass both the House and the Senate. And remember, you're going to lose a lot of Republicans out of that very slim House majority because they're not going to go along with some of the compromises that Kevin McCarthy will have to make. But you're going to lose a lot of Democrats as well who aren't going to want to go along with some of these work requirements and some of the other things that it looks like President Biden might have to give in on in order to get a deal. So it's complicated, needle they're trying to thread here.
And, Brian, the markets are nervous, clearly. 4 days in a row of downturns. They may be, leveling off a little bit today, watching these signals of some optimism, but they are really poised for quite a fall on the warning from Fitch. It's not a reality yet. It hasn't become a downgrade, but there are indicators this is dragged out. This is going to be a real downdraft.
Yeah, and that's essentially what Fitch Ratings was saying in the note yesterday, warning of a downgrade. And that's an important distinction. They didn't downgrade the nation yesterday. They merely said that there's the possibility they could do so if we pass that June 1st date without a resolution. Now, when we talk about what happens in an event like this, we have to remember that the precedent of setting a warning before you actually do the downgrade is part of the standard procedure, not just for Fitch, but for the other major credit ratings agencies as well. I'm thinking of S&P and also Moody's. And when you take a look at 2011, for example, the debt ceiling crisis at that time, S&P and also Moody's 2.5 weeks before the X date said that they were reviewing the United States for a potential downgrade. You'll recall S&P actually followed through on a downgrade. Moody's did not. So Fitch Ratings, having not moved in 2011, might be trying to get ahead of the curve here in this case. But it is an open question about whether or not the other credit ratings agencies in this case will try to move as well. But broadly speaking, the story is that all of these independent auditors, if you will, are worried that the United States, because of this brinksmanship, is not going to hold on to its reputation to pay its bills on time and in full, which would be very damaging to the global economy, given that we are the largest economy in the world, Andrea.
And Doug, let's talk about that, because I talk to foreign diplomats all the time, and they're not only nervous, but they are saying, what is going on here? What kind of democracy do you have? They're comparing it to, frankly, the political chaos in Israel and other parliamentary systems, you know, where you have got coalition governments that keep rising and falling. Italy. I mean, that's not a great comparison for the world's greatest democracy and the world's greatest economy.
Well, certainly the treasuries are the foundation of the global financial system. If we impair their creditworthiness in any way, everyone feels the repercussions, and that's not something I ever would want to contemplate. And what you're hearing from those diplomats is the same thing that Fitch is saying, which is the partisanship makes it impossible for you to effectively manage your finances. And we downgrade people who cannot manage their finances, and they're put them on watch to do it.
There are some of the really extreme voices from the Hill saying that Janet Yellen is just cooking the books. Give us a reality check. You're from the CBO. You're a Republican, but you know, are totally...
There's no cooking the books.
There's no cooking the books.
Put that aside. The reality is, we don't know exactly when the X date is. And what she has said very clearly is that it could be as early as June 1st, and we should act accordingly. But, you know, if the bills don't come up as quickly, the money doesn't go out as quickly, we might get another couple days. But there's not 2 months, right? It is urgent to get it done now and to avoid any even whisper of a default.
And you never know how the tax revenues are coming in as well.
Well, certainly they expected about $150 billion more this year in taxes, and they didn't get it, and that's why we're down to the deadline.
Doug Holtz-Eakin, thank you so much for that reality check. And, of course, Peter Baker and Brian and Garrett Haake as well. Thanks to all of you.